Welcome back, everyone. I hope this is okay. I'm short. That's a good way to get people's attention, is to mess with the mic. I used to do the hands on the board to get my class's attention. So we're learning more that the job of a university president is football for the alumni, parking for the faculty, and here at Pepperdine it's pizza for the students, so we're all getting there. It's a pleasure to introduce John Miller, who is going to be introducing our keynote speaker, Jeff Morad. John is Vice Chancellor of Pepperdine University, and he's a good friend of Jeff Morad, whom we're pleased to have with us today. John also is the father of Matthew Miller, who is a star soccer player on my AYSO team. So John, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. I am so delighted to introduce to you today Jeff Morad. Jeff has had a successful and varied career in sports, and it has led him to be named by the Sporting News on the list of 100 most powerful people in sports 8 different times. And I'll share with you a few words as to why that is. A native of Modesto, California, Jeff graduated with a degree in political science from UCLA and then law school at Villanova University. But in 1983, just 2 years out of law school, Jeff founded Morad Sports Management and began specializing in athlete representation with its main focus in baseball. In his second year, he landed Will Clark and 4 other members of the U.S. Olympic baseball team, all of whom were top 10 draft choices. Second year in practice. And the following year, he then joined forces with Lee Steinberg to form one of the most dynamic partnerships in history, covering both Major League Baseball as well as the NFL. During their 18 years together, Jeff and Lee negotiated more than $3 billion, that's billion with a B, more than $3 billion in athlete contracts, including Pro Football Hall of Fame athletes Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Warren Moon, Thurman Thomas, and on the list goes. On the baseball side, Jeff represented more than 40 first-round selections in the annual baseball draft and negotiated numerous breakthrough deals, among them the $84 million contract that brought Sean Green to Los Angeles and the $160 million contract that Jeff got Manny Ramirez with the Boston Red Sox. Jeff's work in the entertainment in sports has also led to opportunities in the entertainment industry. He was the technical consultant for the baseball film For the Love of the Game, in which he had also a cameo appearance. And he both consulted and appeared in the Oscar-winning movie Jerry Maguire, believed by many to loosely portray Jeff and Lee's own firm. In 2005, Jeff made his move into ownership and became general partner and chief executive officer of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then from 2009 until this past year, Jeff served as vice chairman and chief executive officer of the San Diego Padres. And if that were not enough, Jeff has owned controlling interest in NASCAR's Hall of Fame Racing Group, is involved with a number of sports technology ventures, and throughout his career, Jeff has helped his associates and clients understand the responsibility of giving back. And he's done that himself. He's established an athletics scholarship at his alma mater, UCLA, and 2 years ago established and endowed the Jeffrey S. Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law at Villanova University. So I am thrilled to be able to introduce to you Jeff. Jeff and his wife Jen have 3 terrific sons. Please join me in giving a warm Pepperdine welcome to Jeffrey S. Morad.
Thank you, John. Not often do I get to button my coat, so I'm going to do it just to have a little fun. Not often do I wear a coat. You know, in sports, you don't do those things, right? You all know that. Well, thanks for the kind words. You know, 8 times on that sporting news list. You know, I was thinking about it. I think the last time was about 12 years ago, so that's really old information. And it might have been longer. It really might have been. So, is Ken Starr here? Is he still up there? No? Hadn't made it back in? Well, I got to tell you, you know, when John first called and asked if I'd be interested in speaking, then I talked to Michael Wood, and he kind of, you know, made the point, you know, hey, we'd really like to have you speak at, you know, to give the lunch keynote. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Did you say Ken Starr was going to be at this conference? I said, something's wrong with that picture. I said, I don't deserve to give a keynote if Ken Starr's in the audience. Maybe they had it planned. That's why he's not here. In any case, it's too bad he's not here, because I was going to give him a bad time about the powerhouse sports school he's building down in Waco. Wow. They won the NIT last night? Pretty impressive. Great basketball team on the women's side. Now the men's team doing well, and obviously a pretty good quarterback from a year or two ago. And a good football program that beat our Bruins, unfortunately, in the Holiday Bowl this year. Well, anyway, you came here to hear about sports, right? Yeah, all right, kind of, maybe. Listen, I truly feel like I'm one of the lucky guys who, you know, has not only the benefit of a legal education, but has gotten to spend a career in sports, and that's been a really fun thing to do, and I recommend it to anybody who can navigate the path. I can't say the path was all that clear. In fact, often kind of reevaluated and determined the night before, but you know, day by day, week by week, year by year, over time, you know, I look back and think, wow, like, how did that happen? And I'm often asked about it, frankly, from many law students and the like. You all that are lawyers really don't care because you're off doing your own thing. But, you know, I found myself, when I came out of law school, a huge sports fan with a passion for the industry, but, you know, no one had any ideas about how you might get into it. Today, there are at least vehicles to do that, quite frankly. So whether it's, you know, sports law classes, whether it's symposiums like this, whether it's business schools that focus on sports. I just finished teaching a class over at UCLA's Anderson School this past quarter that was probably more fun than I really expected, but had 60 MBA students who took a class called Business of Sports. Actually, they made us call it sports management, but it really wasn't. It was Business of Sports. And yeah, we had a chance to introduce the students to a lot of people in the industry. And, you know, if only those opportunities had existed when I was looking into the industry back in the early 80s, I would have at least found a clearer way to get there. But instead, I went to work for a traditional law firm, and therein began my education, at least my second one, post-law school. And it's been quite a ride. There are really 3 things that I wanted to touch on today. You know, the first is the concept of thinking outside the box. The fact that I'm even standing here talking about a 25-year plus career in sports is all about thinking outside the box, but it's something that I think is critically important to do, and I'm going to spend a few moments on it. Secondly, having a strong point of view is something that I think is often underestimated or missed, and just not focused on properly. But it's amazing what a strong point of view, regardless of the setting, whether it's how you're going to succeed in your next class, whether it's how you're going to get your first job, whether it's how you're going to go to court and win a case, whatever it might be, or to convince a juror or a witness or a general manager sitting on the other side of the table. Having a strong point of view is something that I think many underestimate. The psychology of that is a pretty powerful thing to utilize, and I think it's important to remember. Lastly, I think, and what I want to talk about a bit today is the art of listening. We talked a little at lunch about it today with a few of you, and I think, again, a bit of an underestimated skill that probably has exponential value when you think about being able to literally be comfortable with silence and not feel the human tendency to fill that silence. It's amazing what people will tell you in those moments, and if you can listen and keep your own mouth quiet and not interrupt and not feel like you need to one-up them or whatever it might be, it's unbelievable what advantages can be gained by simply listening with your own ears. So let's first talk about outside the box thinking. Whether it's pushing the envelope to in your career, whether it's determining a path that's different than what others might otherwise chart for you. In my view, thinking outside the box is something that's a critical thing to do in business. Whether it's your own career, whether it's your own life, or whether it's determining the right outcome in a business setting, or analyzing a complex set of business issues. To me, thinking outside the box is something that it's kind of an oft-used term. I don't know that people recognize the value of it, but I'll give you a practical example in my own life. I didn't have the benefit of a business school education when I came out of law school. Wished I'd done a JD MBA program, but didn't have the forethought to figure it out at the time. So when I came out of school and got involved in the agency business, and we began building companies, not only our own firm, but other companies, as John mentioned, a handful of technology companies and the like. I found myself kind of being forced to learn business and to learn it in a way that maybe I hadn't anticipated. But early on, I learned that one of the most important things to do was to identify talent. And what I've prided myself on over the years is being able to not just find the person who's likely, or the world tells you that they're a good fit, but to literally think outside the box and look to kind of like the old Dodgers did. They're famous for moving catchers to shortstop, and at least in the day, they were, in past years, that was kind of their mantra. They would take great pitchers and they'd turn them into right fielders, and vice versa, and they'd make the right fielder a closer, and they do things that were truly non-traditional in terms of thinking and in baseball, and they often succeeded. And so I pushed myself to think in the same way when we began to hire people, and when we began to staff businesses, and ultimately as I moved on to the Diamondbacks and then the Padres and built executive teams in both cities, anywhere from 50 to 100 new employees that we brought in over the first year or so of our time with each of those clubs. You find that the best hires often come from areas outside the sport. So that we hired a brand manager who was an MBA from Michigan, who came from Dell Computer, and we loved the way she thought. We loved the way she conceptualized what our brand in San Diego should be. We were looking for a communications director, actually a senior vice president level job as I think about it. We ended up hiring a woman who came from the Pentagon, and we watched her. Actually, my president, Tom Garfinkel at the time, had met her on a trip that he had taken to DC that was sponsored by the military, and he watched this woman kind of run the program and run the tour of military facilities that he was on. And he came back and he said, I found the right person. I just don't know if we can get her. Well, it turns out one of her great focuses was in fact military, loved the idea of making an impact in the military. And what we said is, look, we're in San Diego. We've got the largest naval installation in the country. We have also a significant Marine Corps presence, and one of our significant goals is to impact that community. We want them in the ballpark. We'll give away tickets to military. We want to do programs for them. And she said, you know what, that's ideal for what I want. She moved to San Diego from Washington. And regardless of the person, Tom Garfinkel, great example. A couple of you in the audience know Tom, and Tom is now the CEO in San Diego, took over when I left. But I hired him out of NASCAR. I'd gone to a couple NASCAR races as a guest of the Chip Ganassi team, and the guy who took care of me when I was a guest was a vice president at the team named Tom Garfinkel. And I watched him work, and I watched his command of relationships and how he handled himself, and I became more and more convinced that you didn't need to be a baseball-centric person to be an executive in baseball. You needed to be a good people person. And as I watched Tom handle himself and how he dealt with various business challenges that I learned about and I heard about from talking with him, I became convinced that he would be a great executive in baseball. Hired him as a senior VP in Arizona. He moved on to become chief operating officer there. And when I went over to the Padres, I had the right to hire one employee from Arizona, and Tom Garfinkel was the one I brought over and made him my team president. But again, thinking outside the box, right? It's not always apparent. It's not always obvious. But if you can, whether it's building an executive team or whether it's sitting on the other side of a negotiation, trying to craft a win-win for both sides. Thinking outside the box is a critical thing to do, and I really think it's something that we all ought to think about more often. When you get, it's like one of the comments at lunch today was, you sit and talk with a bunch of lawyers, and the conversation's always the same. Well, I know that's overgeneralizing, but or overstating, I should say, but the truth is there's some of that in all of our lives, whether you get mired in relationships. To be able to to hire people who are smarter than you, I think is a great thing to aspire to. I know the safe executives always want to hire people that aren't going to challenge them. The truth is those who will succeed at the highest level are going to be executives that are willing to hire people who are smarter than them and put them around them. Create challenge in an organization. Create challenge for yourself as you chart your career path. I mean, get around people who are smarter than you, who will challenge you and ask you questions that you might not ask yourself. Tough questions, about your future, about what you're doing in a particular job or setting. And in my view, it's a very, very important thing to do in business and in life. So I talked about having a strong point of view. It's hard to always have that, quite frankly. I mean, you enter a negotiation, and there are times when you don't know exactly what the right answer is. You don't know exactly. I'll give an example. In San Diego, we found a broadcast opportunity that existed that we hadn't seen as clearly as maybe it played out. We knew it existed. The Padres had a deal with Cox Broadcasting, which was due to expire 2 years after we bought into the club. Our group bought half the team. We ran it and operated it, and we were responsible for figuring out the next broadcast arrangement for the team. Well, we realized that if we got to free agency, much like a player would, that there were no rights of first refusal, that Cox had, so that we absolutely could negotiate with anybody we wanted. We gave Cox every opportunity to make a deal. They offered a significant amount of money. In fact, when we bought the club, we were told by the Goldman Sachs bankers that they expected that the broadcast deal would be worth something like $400 or $500 million, and sure enough, that's about what Cox offered. But once we got into the open market beyond the exclusive window that Cox had, and were able to negotiate with others, we really saw a market explode on us. I mean, we're in San Diego, we're the 26th of 30 teams in terms of market size. We don't have the number of cable subscribers that most of the markets have. Obviously, teeny compared to Los Angeles. And we had Time Warner, DirecTV, and Fox all come after us at the same time. Cox continuing to say, look, we'd love to still do something with you. The numbers just kept progressing upward. And it wasn't until I saw that explosion that I developed a strong point of view. And honestly, on the front end, I kind of protected myself against it. So I really tried hard to not get to the point where I just assumed that we'd end up at a certain level, because frankly I probably wouldn't have assumed enough. So letting the market forces compete, which Ken Starr, others have done with their conferences, with their schools, and as the content explosion continues to, many predict the bubble's going to burst, but it hasn't yet. And as those numbers continue to grow, we're sitting in San Diego with the Padres, a small market team, experiencing the exact same phenomenon. So all three other bidders ended up pushing $1 billion. And I finally developed my point of view. It's $1.5 billion. And I argued that $1.5 billion was the number. And I did it at what turned out to be just the right time, because it dropped two of them out. Fox stepped up. Actually, the two chased it pretty good. But at the end of the day, Fox won the deal at $1.5 billion. And they did the deal that I had outlined several months earlier as to what it would take, and that's exactly what we ended up with. We left the team in good hands down in San Diego. We sold it near the end of last year, and the new owners own 20% of the broadcast entity, and they have a terrific cable contract. Now they're trying to get carriage for the market, and they've struggled with a couple of the carriers, but at the end of the day, they'll get it done. And I'm convinced that it'll be a terrific success story for all. But on the team side, again, having a strong point of view is critical. Not being sure, if I had really not been sure all the way to the end, there's no way we would have gotten to that number, because there comes a point in every discussion, whether it's a business situation, whether it's a negotiation, whether it's something as direct on point as a broadcast negotiation, there comes a point when the bidders need to be led. And you can let them create the foundation of a process, you can let them chase, you can let them make offers, but at some point they've got to be led to a conclusion. Or they start to feel like they're just negotiating against themselves, and you'll have a process that fails. So determining that strong point of view, I think, is a really critical thing to do, and very important to do. So I talked about listening, and I probably already said most of what I have to say on the subject, because I do think it's as simple as not feeling the human tendency to fill silence. And there are times, I will try not to do it today because it's a little obnoxious, but there are times that I've tried to demonstrate to an audience what it's like, and I'll stand here. Now, being motionless makes it even more dramatic, right? Or more silly, depending on your point of view. But again, nobody is comfortable with silence, at least from the get-go. Strategically, if you view it as a potential advantage, again, if you can just keep your mouth shut. It's unbelievable what people will tell you. They'll often tell you far more than they intended to. They'll share things that they, had no intention of sharing. They will literally tell stories out of school, and they'll do it because, in many cases, they're uncomfortable with the silence. So that I think that to the extent you can be confident, have a strong point of view, be willing to think outside the box, at the same time, listen for hints along the way that someone will likely tell you if you don't, try to talk over them or try to, tell them how smart you are instead of listening to what they have to say, you can often prevail, regardless of the setting. Again, the most complex circumstances. It's amazing to me how just this time-honored commitment that I've had in my own life of, let somebody tell you. Let them tell you. That doesn't mean I just sit there like a bump on a log. I mean, I have an agenda, and obviously, at lunch today I was asked by your dean, what skills would prepare a lawyer for the future, or a young law student, a would-be lawyer, 10 years out. And I talked about, certainly there's a need for, having a command of substantive skills or substantive issues. There's a need for, an understanding, a mindfulness of advocacy. There's a need for, a commanding presence. Don't mistake that. I mean, that's something that's important too. You dress for the occasion. You try to look the part. It doesn't mean you have to look fancy or smooth, or you don't want to look too smooth, obviously. But there are things about, as I stand here in my suit and tie, I know. But there are aspects of presentation that are important. But again, keep in mind that you've got to read your audience. You've got to understand who you're talking to. You've got to be prepared substantively, and at the same time, I think you have to be prepared to listen to the other side, because they'll often give you the right answer if you keep your ears open and pay attention. So I'm really excited about the Sports Law Center that we've started back at Villanova. And I only mention it because I look at the efforts that are being made across the country. This one being an example here at Pepperdine of extending the sports reach as being a terrific thing for the industry. I mean, we're in a industry today, depending on your math, that's anywhere from 30 to $40 billion in the sports space. That's a big industry, and there are opportunities that exist today that didn't exist in years past. I talked about the need for education and classes like these are being taught by Professor Weston here on campus and others at Pepperdine, but also the fact that now there are sports-specific classes is something that didn't exist in the past. When I went to law school, if you found an entertainment law class, you were lucky. Today, obviously, as I said earlier, you can take a business class, business school class in sports. You can take law school classes. You can attend symposiums. You can learn. You can do competitions like the Sabre competition that your team from Pepperdine won over in Phoenix a bit ago. Those are competitions that are sports-centric, and obviously that's a big deal. We're trying to capture some of that same interest in our program back at Villanova. Andrew Brandt, who is the director of that center, is here today and going to be a panelist a little later this afternoon, and I'm going to stay and listen, so I'm excited for that. But I think there's an opportunity that exists today that for many of you, especially those who are law students anyway, and maybe even some of you who are lawyers, that didn't exist in the past. There are licensing entities, there are sports marketing entities, sports divisions have become realities of law firms, of advertising agencies, of numerous businesses that do business with the sports industry. So far beyond team sports, which is where most of the opportunities existed, far beyond college sports, there are opportunities in sports today for young lawyers, for good thinkers, good business thinkers that can make a difference. And I hope that that this symposium has maybe triggered that interest in but one or two or three people, maybe more. If it did, that's a great thing. If our center back at Villanova does the same, I'll be very proud, and I hope those of you who are inclined to pursue sports do it. It's a great industry. I got there a little on purpose and a little by accident. As I said earlier, couldn't have designed the path, but wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Thanks for having me here today, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.